Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our fabulous presentations. This is our final talk of the day, and we've got Sharon Sholzberg-Gray here, who's a health policy advocate, and here to introduce her is the Patrick Curran from Independent Living Canada. Patrick, would you like to take the floor?
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's good to be with you. Independent Living Canada, Vie Autonome Canada, has been around for 35 years and believes in an accessible, inclusive, and barrier-free Canada for all Canadians, and all Canadians living with any type of disability. More than 22% of all Canadians identify as having a disability. Today, I have the honor of introducing Sharon Sholzberg-Gray, who is a lawyer and an accomplished independent public policy professional. Sharon has been a chief executive officer for various national nonprofit associations for over 25 years, involved in health and social policy. A graduate of science, law, arts, and public policy from McGill University, Concordia, and the University of Ottawa, Sharon has also distinguished herself by being the vice chair of Associated Medical Services, the first alternate member of the Ottawa Board of Health, a member of the Board of Governors of the Quebec Bar Foundation, and was on the external advisory board of the McGill University School of Nursing. Back in the 60s, Sharon was the first woman president of McGill University student government. It was in Montreal during the 60s that Sharon Sholzberg met and later married the late Right Honorable Herb Gray, the longest serving member of Parliament in Canadian history and former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. It was in July of 2018 that Sharon was appointed to the Order of Canada for her advocacy work involving Medicare. Sharon is with us here today to tell us of her newfound respect for the challenges faced by Canadians with disabilities. Sharon has recently experienced barriers to full accessibility in her own life as a result of mobility limitations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and privilege to introduce to you the unstoppable Sharon Sholzberg-Gray. Sharon?
Well, thank you very much. I have to tell you, in reviewing my life and health situation, I realized that I've been suffering from a variety of disabilities for about 20 years because I'm a person who had both knees replaced, both hips replaced, a shoulder replaced, and another shoulder requiring replacement. But I was able throughout to have an independent existence, to live my life as I wished. You know, I had a once a week cleaning person who came, but I drove everywhere in my car. I had limitations because I had to use a cane for most of those years. And I was aware of, you know, not going to slippery places. I couldn't climb over snowbanks. And I also, by the way, for 20 years, because of these various surgeries and deficits, I've had a disabled parking permit all these years, and yet I never viewed myself as someone with any limitations, even though I understand that outsiders would have viewed me as a person with severe or moderate disabilities. In any event, that's where I start. I also had a husband who had Parkinson's disease in the last 2-3 years of his life, and so that was certainly an extreme disability. And what I discovered through all the processes, my own and my husband's, is that there's virtually no support from our health system, our social system, or anything for people with disabilities. In fact, you have to have a substantial income in order to make life palatable. And fortunately, between my husband and myself, we had more income than the average person. But I'm constantly, and throughout my life and my advocacy, worried about the services that everybody has. And that's where I'm starting. But I also would like to talk about my current disability situation. My life changed substantially on August the 5th. On August the 5th, I had a catastrophic collapse of my right leg as I entered the back seat of a taxi. And my right foot, instead of facing forward, was facing in the opposite direction. What it meant is, and that's what they discovered at the hospital when I was taken to emergency, is that I had a broken femur that was broken in numerous places and almost irreparable. I had a knee that totally disappeared. It was a replaced knee, but it was a knee and there was just nothing there. And I had a hip that was injured. And the issue was, would I survive the surgery that I would inevitably have to have? No one was worried about I'd be disabled or not. Was I going to live or was I going to die? And I didn't know that 6 weeks before there was a new act passed in Canada for accessibility. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about life and death and nothing more. And it took about 5 days till I got the surgery because the surgeon didn't know what to do. They kept ordering spare parts, as they told me. Rods, hinges, bolts, all kinds of things. How are they going to put all my missing parts together and even make some kind of knee that might someday operate or be able to be usable? And then would I live through an 8-hour surgery? And I did. So when I came out, I was a person, moved about on a lift and whatnot, and I couldn't move. And my right leg had substantial nerve damage because of all the nuts and bolts and whatnot. And it was considered that it would be basically unusable. And that was okay to me also, because I lived and I could still advocate and I could still work. And even though I was at the time, I'm now 77, 76, thank goodness that the surgery team had confidence that I could live and I could work and I could do anything that I wanted to do. Of course, they didn't know about the social services and the help that people need and that kind of thing. So what I want to tell you is, fast forward to November. By that point, my leg, which I couldn't lift I couldn't lift at all. I could lift a few inches and I could walk short distances with a 2-wheeled walker. And I mostly had to use a wheelchair. I also needed full-time help at home, but of course it wasn't available. And that's where my story really starts. So, I've already started, I guess, about 5 times. Now, when I was in the Ottawa hospital for 4 weeks, and then later for 2 weeks at the Ottawa Rehabilitation Center, which was just wonderful, which made me sort of start to be more functional, though I needed, anyone is familiar with that, I needed 2 people to remove me from the bed, couldn't do anything with my leg, that kind of thing. I was given a lot of training on from occupational therapy, on how to try to be independent. But suddenly, after 2 weeks at the short-term rehab, I was told, well, even though you need 2 assistants to get you out of bed, we've decided that you're a very strong person. And if you have any help at home that could stay with you, we're going to discharge you. And they gave me about 2 days notice. So my daughter, who has a successful career and 2 young children and a husband, said she would move in and stay with me for 4 or 5 weeks. And she did, but that became untenable after a while. So I had to hire my own help at a cost of $60,000 a year because I had no public services. And why didn't I have any public services? Because the social worker who came to speak to me at short-term rehab said, so do you have family? I see you have lots of visitors. I said, oh yes. And my daughter's going to move in with me for 4 or 5 weeks and then we'll see what happens from there. And they said, well, we can give you 10 days of home support. And I said, I spent my whole life advocating for a broad vision of healthcare and not just a bare bones Medicare, but a Medicare that served the needs of all members of our society, whether at home, in the community, in long-term care facilities and whatnot. And you're telling me that I, who cannot move independently, I get, 10 days of home support. And she said, I'm so sorry, but we're out of resources and there's a long waiting list in this region and you can't have any. So that was the story. So then I found myself in November sitting next to Patrick Curran at a dinner. It was a partisan dinner. It was a Liberal caucus Christmas party. And I told him my story about my being disabled. And I also said to him, you can't believe the barriers that there are to disabled people. And he said, oh, yes, I can. And what I didn't tell him at the time was my main fear sitting with him, next to him. I was then using my wheelchair because I could only drag my right leg around and be on my 2-wheeled walker for very short distances. My main fear was the bathroom at the Shaw Center going to be a bathroom that I could use, or a bathroom that would be so badly constructed that I couldn't pull myself up out of it onto this walker or wheelchair or whatever I had. And of course, that was the case because I have discovered that there's been no bathroom yet in the city of Ottawa, and I'm including at the Ottawa Hospital, at the physiotherapy, the one attached to the physiotherapy unit at Riverside, that I can get myself out of. The toilets are too low, they're all different, the grab bars are all in a different spot. I can't use them. I need somebody to come in with me and yank me up. And that's, not the greatest life. So if I can't even use a bathroom anywhere in this entire city, including the hospital, I don't know what that means. And that's why in my remarks, I talk about when will there be a Canadians with Disabilities Act that would enable people to go to the bathroom and have a design that will fit everyone's needs. And what I discovered is, and won't have to have someone with her to yank her up. I mean, absurd. So when I was in danger of dying in August and even in September and even onto it, because I had a surgery that lasted 8 hours and it went up and down my entire leg and everything was glued together and I couldn't put weight on the leg and whatnot. And they were still saying my life was in danger. I decided to go on my iPad and make a reservation to go to Florida the first week in January. Since my husband passed away 6 years ago, my daughter and I and her 2 little girls have had an annual Girls' Week in Florida. And we stayed at a hotel that said it was perfectly accessible. And I knew it because I know the southeast coast of Florida. And I knew that it had disabled entry and all kinds of things. It even had a ramp leading down to the ocean. But the next story I want to tell is the fact that there are rules in Canada, Transport Canada, on accessibility on airplanes. And I know that a lot of people with disabilities go on airplanes. And what I discovered is that it didn't work for people with my condition. First of all, I had to get on the phone and wait 2 hours to speak to someone. They told me that if you have a disability, you have to tell people in advance and what you are and what you need and all that kind of thing. And so I went on for 2 hours. It turned out I was on a lineup with people who were waiting to get a special sale for cheap airline tickets that was on that time. And I was in the same lineup as, even though it was a disability issue I wanted to talk about. So when I finally got on the phone after 2 hours, the person said to me, "I'm sorry, I've only been dealing with people who are looking for the cheap fares. I don't know anything about the disability rules of Air Canada. I'm going to have to look it up." And I said, "Well, I have. It says that I'm allowed to enter the airplane with my walker because I could walk the length of the airport, that I have my own wheelchair, but it could be brought down just like a stroller and that kind of thing. And that if I bring the walker onto the plane with my daughter's help, I'll be able to access the washroom and get out of my seat and that kind of thing. But I will not be able to if I can't have the walker." And he said, "Fine, I'm going to put this in your record. You can go with the walker." When I came to the Air Canada counter to check in, and I, the longtime advocate, said, "I have this walker. I'm allowed to bring it onto the plane. And I know that there's room for it in the bins above, and that's fine." And the person said to me, "No, you're not." I said, "Well, why not?" She said, "What if people have carry-on luggage and there's no room?" I said, "Oh, aren't you fortunate? For that very reason, my daughter and my 2 little granddaughters and I checked our luggage. So for sure there's going to be room for my walker." "No, I'm sorry, you can't bring the walker in." I said, "So how am I going to get into the airplane?" "Oh, you don't need to worry. A team of people will take you in this narrow wheelchair and get you into your seat, carry it into you." I said, "And so how will I go to the bathroom while I'm on the plane?" Because I could with my daughter's help. They said, "Oh, you won't be able to go." And I said, "Oh, okay. That's the rules? You can't go to the bathroom while you're on the plane." Well, that didn't look like accessibility to me. So then I said, and I'm sitting on an aisle seat, and 2 strangers are going to be next to me. I won't be able to get up from the aisle seat because I can't get up without leaning on my walker. And they said, "Oh, maybe your 2 granddaughters could sit on that side and they look very athletic and small and they could just climb over you." so you don't have to worry about, you know, that kind of thing. Well, that didn't seem acceptable, and I was literally crying. I have a long-time advocate, and when I started arguing with the person at Air Canada, they said to me, "We're not going to let you on the flight if you don't start arguing." I said, "But it was confirmed I could do all that. Not letting you on." And my daughter said, just stop it, Mom. Forget your advocacy. I don't care if you're I won't use the word, begins with S, disturber. And that was it. So I had to use self-control for 5 hours because I had pre-boarding. And then when I got out in Fort Lauderdale, guess what I discovered? Because the first thing to do was to get to a bathroom. My daughter quickly wheeled me to the bathroom, and she said, "I'll go in with you to help you out." And then we discovered, lo and behold, the bars were all in the right place. The toilet was the right height and everything. And I could pull myself up. And everywhere I went for those 11 days we were there, that was the case. The washrooms in the hotel, it was a condo hotel, everything. In other words, there was a uniform standard that was always ADA compliant. That is the Americans with Disabilities Act. Obviously, we don't have that here because there has not yet been a toilet anywhere in the city of Ottawa that accommodates me, especially at the new Infinity Center in Ottawa, which has beautiful big banquets and all kinds of things. And the toilets are about 14 inches from the floor. And it was a total riot when I went to a big function there. So I don't think that's a very good story, frankly. And it shows the difficulties people have. But I think the really important thing, you know, so here I am, a person who can't travel by plane, who can't, doesn't matter how many laws there are in Canada, and who can't access a lot of things that I feel that I should be entitled to, particularly an air travel trip. And so I thought, okay, and they also told me, don't worry, there's going to be these lovely team of handsome guys, as if I care at the age of 76, then now 77, who are going to take you up in this narrow wheelchair and make sure that you get into your seat. And that did happen, and they were lovely. We also had to be very careful because I then had my leg in a very, very wide brace, which was about as wide as the wheelchair. So we had to keep it from banging all over the place. And then on the trip back, I made the same 2-hour wait, went through the whole story about my right to bring my walker on, the whole thing. But when I went to check in, that wasn't permitted. And it was the whole same story again after spending the 2 hours in a lineup with people who are looking for seat sales. So at the very least, if they tell you have to get on a line to, especially, you know, to confirm what disabilities you have and what you need, it shouldn't be on the same lineup as people who are waiting for seat sales. But that's a whole other story, and it doesn't seem like much, but if it made me, a seasoned advocate for access to a proper health system and proper for everybody, and a social system that meets the needs of everyone, I couldn't deal with it. I was mostly crying, and that's not a very, very good story. I think another really important thing to mention, and I'm not even sure what the timing is, someone is going to have to tell me, but I think I'm okay, is the issue of the financial burden of living with a disability. I don't know how people get the help they want, because in order to be independent, you have to have a certain amount of help. And if you don't get the help, you can't be independent. You also, if you are going to live in a particular facility, and I didn't want to talk about long-term care facilities, as Patrick noted in my background, I was once the CEO of something called the Canadian Long-Term Care Association. And I always advocated for appropriate institutional care, though I prefer people to live in the community and have appropriate home supports, but we obviously don't have them. So I don't even know what people do. I'm very fortunate. I inherited 60% of my husband's parliamentary pension. That provides me right now with the $60,000 a year I have to pay for the help that I need, and without which I couldn't exist. Let's go to another little subject. I'm sure that a lot of people in the disability community use para-transpo, but when I first came home from the hospital, I was still incapable of putting even a shoe on my foot. Paratranspo does not come up to your condo. I live in a beautiful condo on the 24th floor and help you put your shoes on. So I had to hire a company, a magical private sector company, that for $30 an hour at a 30-hour minimum will come up to your own apartment, put your shoes on, help you put your coat on, remember my bad shoulders, and get me down to the indoor garage off the main lobby of my beautiful condo building and use my car to take me to physiotherapy, because my car has a seat that bends backward a lot, and so when I couldn't bend my knee, I could lean backward and that kind of thing. So there are people with disabilities that can't use paratranspo unless they have a system where the driver comes right up to where you are and makes sure you can get down to where they are. And I always think to myself, am I the only person with this particular combination of disabilities who can't use paratranspo? I'm not sure. Now, during this period of COVID-19 and all of that, of course, there's extra problems in the life of people with disabilities because we're all worried about contracting, getting that disease, and it can spread. And I'm certainly aware of it, given my age, being 77 now and being in a vulnerable population. It doesn't matter, because starting last August or September, my entire life consisted of going to physiotherapy, going to medical appointments, having the special driver from this company take me to those appointments, and then otherwise mainly stay in my home. The only difference between the COVID-19 situation and my current one is I can no longer have visitors, and I don't, except for the one helper that I hire, because frankly, I have no choice. I've learned how to be very self-sufficient. Like, I hang on to counters sometimes, because together with my walker, because I'm supposed to have my two hands firmly on this two-wheeled walker at the same time, without which I could kind of tip over. But I'm still uncertain as to how I'm going to live the rest of my life. I have permanent nerve damage in my leg. I was told that I have a 6 months window of opportunity to get some nerve regeneration, but how much, it's uncertain. And for that, I require special machinery and equipment at the physiotherapy clinic at the Riverside Hospital. But of course, I haven't had access to any of that since March the 16th. But I'm okay with whatever happens in the future. And the physiotherapy might start under very strict conditions in another couple of weeks. But I think all is okay. But I don't know, a lot of people with disabilities require physiotherapy, and you have to pay for your physiotherapy, even if it's at the Riverside Hospital. So I'm still uncertain as to how people can afford all of these things. And in my case, it's a special driver, $90 each trip to the Riverside, paying for the private Riverside physiotherapy. I had 6 weeks free when I first went in September, and all of those kinds of things. So I'm really not worried about myself. I have to tell you this. There have been certain barriers, that I faced, but as I point out, because I was fortunate enough to inherit 60% of my late husband's pension, I have that base income which I can spend for my care. I would have liked to do other things with it, perhaps, but it's fine to do. But what I am concerned, and that's why I talk about the financial burden of living with a disability, is I don't know how people can access the services that they need without that kind of thing. I'd just like to talk about ageism for a second. When I looked up the American websites on disability, they say they have on their future agenda ageism and disabilities, because it's an important issue. Because remember, the problem with the lack of care people are getting in long-term care facilities, which have a lot of people living in them. I'm sure it's not everybody's first choice, but there are a lot of people of all population ages with disabilities living in them. And I know a lot about long-term care. And the one thing I've discovered after knowing so much about it is I will never go into a long-term care facility, no matter what it takes. And that's a tragic situation, because we should know better than that. We should have situations in terms of staffing ratios and in terms of paying people who take care of others and to perform such an essential care. And we all know the issues. We're all looking at on television every day, and it's become the big scandal. At the time COVID-19 started, I got an email from the Governor General's office saying, you got an Order of Canada for your advocacy on behalf of healthcare. Is there any issue you would like to do? Because we're going to do some webinars or various things where the people who want Order of Canada in the area of health want to say something about it. And the first thing that came to my head, and this was way before the issue of long-term care and its deficits came to the fore, was the situation in long-term care. I'm sure, given the way they're constructed, given the private ownership that started to happen many, many years ago, because the government didn't want to pay to build the facilities and that type of thing, this was a problem that was going to happen, and I guarantee it will in about 2 weeks. And I remember when I mentioned this to other people, they said, oh, no, it's nothing, it's not on the horizon. I said, take it from me, it will be. So I'm so sorry that in my own mind, I was predicting where a big problem would come. And that had to do, frankly, with lack of respect for an aging population. And that's really a sorry state of affairs. I don't mind if I have to pay extra taxes to pay for the costs of other people. In fact, I'm so happy that I can, because it creates these services that everyone in society is going to require, and I'd like to contribute to them. And but that's the issue is, why don't we have those services? I haven't ever. I mean, are there Canadians saying yes, we need to pay proper salaries? We need to have proper staffing ratios. We have to have different design. You don't even have the right to air-conditioned rooms in most of these facilities, just in central places. So that's why there's such a tremendously heavy death rate of people in those institutions. And I'm really coming to the close of my presentation now, except to say, I wanted to say a word or two about emotional challenges. I often talk to family members, and I'm very fortunate because I have a wonderful son and daughter. I have a son that's a psychiatrist at the Royal Ottawa, and a daughter who's a brilliant communication specialist, and my sister and whatnot. And I say, I didn't choose to have the rest of my life be this way. As someone with a lot of disabilities, I would like to be independent. I wouldn't like to need help coming every day. I would prefer to go back to the life I had before my leg fell apart and developed permanent nerve damage as a result. Other people wouldn't have thought it was perfect because I had shoulder problems, knee problems, hip problems. I couldn't walk more than a half a block. I couldn't climb over snowbanks. I couldn't go navigate the icy sidewalks in Ottawa. Well, I thought it was bad then. I can tell you that I'm less able to do that today. So I just want to say that in spite of everything, and I'm hoping that the services will be available to all people with disabilities that are required, you can lead, and you ought to lead, a wonderful and inspiring and contributing life, no matter what your disabilities and no matter what your age. And that's the kind of society that I'm hoping will be able to happen for everyone. And I vow to spend the rest of my life, and I don't know how many years it will be, but while I used to be an advocate for our health system and our social system and appropriate services for all, I would like to devote the rest of it to working for the rights of people with disabilities. And I'm trying to educate myself more about that sector than I currently am. And for that purpose, I've actually linked up with someone at University of Ottawa Centre for Health Policy and Health Law, whose advisory committee I'm on, who's an expert in disability law, and I'm going to help him teach me more about it so I can do some effective advocacy. And I think that's the end of my remarks now.
Thank you. That honestly, you're bang on time. You're at 4:24, so that's pretty good.
I had to help her hold up her finger.
Oh, did you? Okay, so that's how you knew. I wasn't sure. So we do have 3 questions. We have a question from Brent. He is asking a couple things. He's first of all, he's asking how, if he wants to connect with you, how he should reach out to connect with you. Do you have
Yeah, he can connect with me. Well, Patrick has my information.
Sure.
So
I can probably get his email as well if you'd like.
So you can just email me, and I'm going to be happy to speak to him.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. He also asks, he says he has a disability and people judge him. He's curious to know what you think of how he should stop it from happening.
Well, that's a problem. And we have to change the views of society, because you know that people talk down to people with disabilities. People don't speak to them. And I have to tell you, when at the beginning, when I would just be in a hospital setting or something, and I would go with my daughter, let's say,
right,
even to the place at University of Ottawa where I had my it happened to be University of Ottawa, but they had a center for nerve conduction tests. The people at the desk wanted to talk to her and not to me, as if somehow there was something wrong with me because I had a disability. And that's a problem, I think. We have to change the viewpoint of society. I don't even know how to do it. I mean, it faces...
Right.
But I've always had friends who had disabilities, so I was aware of those issues, and that was that. But I can't believe it when they gave a questionnaire to me at University of Ottawa when I was going to get the test, and they handed the questionnaire and say, "Here, your daughter will do it for you." What?
Yeah.
I mean, just because I couldn't walk and I was 77,
right,
didn't mean that I couldn't answer questions.
Yeah, just being pigeonholed. Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. We have a question from Rebecca. She asks, do you have any advice for fledgling advocates? What can we do to better support our community? That's
where my whole lifetime career has been, in the area of advocacy, public policy advocacy. First of all, you have to be extremely knowledgeable. Secondly, you have to have a lot of research and study. Fortunately, when I was CEO of the Canadian Hospital Association, I had a huge staff who did a lot of research, but I always had to know the issues in detail myself. You cannot go before a parliamentary committee or a cabinet minister or anything without having the facts and being able to make a persuasive case and answer every question. And in some cases, you have to have patience also, because it takes a long time to change regulations and make them different from what they are. But it seems to me, you can't just say, I'm disabled and I want you to make changes. You have to say, what kind of changes? What do you really want? That kind of thing. For instance, I want to have a meeting with the Minister of Transport, Mark Garneau. I had intended to have one as soon as I came back from that disastrous travel situation on my flight to and from Florida. But January 8th, there was this Ukrainian flight that was knocked out of the ground by the Iranians. And I thought, oh, he's so busy, I'm not going to bother him about my situation. I should have, but I'm going to get in touch with him now. But I'm going to make sure I have all the facts, because it's unacceptable and not the way I was treated, not consistent at all with Air Canada policy. I know it because I looked up their website. They treated me in the exact opposite way. So you really have to be knowledgeable, and you have to have patience. It took me, as I say, I think, I co-founded an organization called the Health Action Lobby. It took about 15 years till we achieved our goal. But along the way, we had mini goals.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks for that. We've reached the end of our time. There are some other questions that are still pending, but what I'll do is Sharon, if it's okay with you, I'll take those offline with you. We'll get those answered, and then we'll share them with everyone who's asked.
Absolutely. And thank you all for having the patience to listen.
No, thank you again. It was a wonderful talk, and thanks to Patrick for introducing you. So
Yeah.
that wraps day one of our wonderful conference. And if you are, please take to Twitter at Enable Ottawa is our account, and continue the conversation on there. There is no fireside chat today. All the fireside chats are happening on Thursday afternoon. However, there is an after hours presentation tomorrow by AI Media to discuss their closed captioning software. But yeah, other than that, like I said, please feel free to take to social media to continue these conversations. We look forward to continuing to chat and to continuing this conversation. And we have a ton of content for you tomorrow. So please tune in tomorrow, same time, 2 p.m. And we will we'll resume the panels at that point. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for showing up. It's really great. This is obviously a new platform for us. And it's great to see we're getting so much engagement. So thanks again, and have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.